my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and it is Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday trends. I'll be flying solo on today's show. And first and foremost, before I get into what we're talking about on the headlines, two major things going on here in the New York City area. One is the Puerto Rican Day Parade is obviously this weekend. The Puerto Rican Week is going on, as we like to have the festivities spread out. Of course, Saturday, I will be DJing at the 116th Street Festival in El Barrio in New York. So if you're around in the New York City area, come see me. I think I'm on 112 my stages. I don't quote me on that. It's the iHeart radio stage. So I'll be over there all day long for the festival. I'm really excited about that. But speaking of New York, I don't know if you guys have been on social media, if you've watched the news. We've had this crazy air quality alert where it's a wildfire from Canada that has been just making shit wild down here. You can't even breathe stepping outside. The air is orange. Anybody from California, I'm sure this is sadly normal life for you. But us New Yorkers over here are kind of losing our shit a little bit. Got masks on outside because it's just you can't breathe. And I was building a deck in my backyard. Yes, I am building a deck myself. If you've been following on social media at DJ Dramos, I've been trying to document the whole process with my deck building out here. But I couldn't even finish it because the damn air quality was so bad. I had to get back in the damn house. So it's been an interesting week, I'd say. But I'm really, really, really excited about Saturday for the festivities here. As a proud Puerto Rican, as a proud New Yorican, this is our time to shine. So I'm excited for that. Again, if you are in New York, come through 116th Street Festival. I'll be performing on the iHeartRadio stage all day long, sweating it out there, just enjoying the vibes. Now, onto the Thursday trends, right? That's what we're all here for. We're going to be talking about a few different things, man. Shocker, not really a shocker. Florida be doing Florida-like stuff. As they have picked up asylum seekers in Texas and then flew them to Sacramento. So DeSantis and his crew back at it again, creating a shitstorm here and politicizing the livelihood of people who are literally just trying to get a better life. We also have, it's Pride Month as well. So you have this old speech of AOC circulating again, talking about religion and how people on the right are using religion as a means to justify their bigotry towards the LGBTQ plus community. So we'll talk about that. Also, we have this really sad and just tragic story that I almost I don't want to bum people out, but I do think it's a necessary conversation. And it's around the age-old practice of bullying. And you had a really sad story in New York where a 10-year-old student actually took his own life as a result of really harsh bullying, and his school really not doing much about it, if anything at all. So I just thought it'd be an important conversation to talk about, as we're trying to be people who are growing and doing better. A part of that is also the way we raise our kids. And it's just a really tragic story that I want to just kind of shed some light on. And then, on the positive side of things, in Army Hent this segment, we always are talking about Hollywood kind of really fucking up the diversity and not creating opportunities for our stories to be told or for us to see ourselves. Now you have Spiderman Across the Universe is getting a lot of really positive feedback over the diversity in the cast, and particularly when you talk about the Latin sort of driven diversity that's going on. It's a really beautiful thing. So I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to plan on watching it actually over the weekend. But I did want to talk about it because I think it's important. We can't always just be critiquing. We got to celebrate when people actually get it right. So we'll talk about that. But first and foremost, as we always do, let's start with the nonsense, the BS from this last week, and a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Say it louder for the
All right, so we'll start off with Florida man Ron DeSantis. Now, mum has been the word for the powers that be when it comes to this case, but basically, the state of Florida picked up asylum seekers on the Texas border Monday and took them by private jet to California's capital city in Sacramento at taxpayer expense, by the way, for the second time in 4 days. California officials have said that this is prompting allegations that migrants were misled and catching shelters and aid workers by surprise, right? And California Governor Gavin Newsom has lashed out against Ron DeSantis, calling him a, quote, small, pathetic man, and suggested that the state could pursue kidnapping charges against him. Now, this is all performative politics, as we've discussed a ton on this show. And the sad part is it's not a victimless situation. You are fucking with the lives of people who have already gone through so many different atrocities, but even without that, are just people in general. And you are moving them under the false pretenses of having, safety and a place to go. And you're tricking them into leaving the place that they came into to then go to this other area where they probably have no family. These shelters aren't even knowingly, set up for them. They don't know, are unaware. The shelters are unaware that they are coming, so they don't have the proper things in place to intake these people and give them at least the best quality of life possible as far as a place to sleep and meals and clothing and things like that. And again, you're doing it all just to rile up your base and it's like to out Trump and to prove who can be the most evil and ruthless and heartless as a means to get people to vote for you. And it's like a broken record. It feels like every week I'm saying the same fucking thing, but it's scary, man. And it's sad, and I was thinking about this a lot yesterday as I was driving, just like the current state of politics and how there's a lot on both sides that really piss me off and that I think are inherently detrimental to our quality of life in this country. But with that said, and I was thinking about that because I was, contemplating an idea. For those of you who know, I had a TV show that I was doing for a while with LATV, and it was a lot of politically driven content. And, my journey right now is really trying to figure out how to bridge the gap a bit, because I don't want to be one of these talking heads that I see on like MSNBC, where it's literally just like a gossip show about tearing into Donald Trump. And granted, there's a lot to tear into. Obviously, he's done a lot of fucked shit, but I don't want that to be my legacy. I don't think that I'm serving an audience the way they deserve by just blindly shitting on one side and turning it again into TMZ of politics, essentially, which I feel like is what happens a lot on the left. And they over sensationalize every single story, every single negative thing that goes on in terms of the Republican Party. So in sort of conceptualizing what I want my voice to kind of be moving forward as we head into this next political season, I'm trying to kind of be a little bit more empathetic to a degree and understanding, even if I don't agree, where people are coming from and being able to try to have that conversation. And shit like this makes it really, really hard because as much as I think the Democrats as a whole put on the front like they care, the Republicans, at least those on the far right, like the DeSantis of the world and Donald Trump and all of them, they're just inherently evil. And I think there are levels to this, right? You could say a politician's a politician. They lie, they cheat, they steal. Sure. I would agree with all of those statements. I'd agree that it happens on both sides. But the one difference is these are just plain evil acts. You're literally just taking advantage of the most disenfranchised people and using them as tools and I don't know, just as a disgusting ploy to further your political agenda. And that's just plain evil. And that's the difference between the left and the right. I think the left has a line that they draw in the sand, right? And again, they have their own issues. I don't agree with everything the Democrats do. I don't think they're doing enough for us. But the right has shown that the gloves are off and they've thrown humanity out the window and are willing to play with people's lives just to fulfill their own political agenda. And that's the difference right now. And that's why I think we can't find a meeting place in the middle, because it's like either you support the destruction of humanity and pure evil, or you have to get on the other side and say, enough is enough. And until you begin to operate like people who are fit for office and actually care about the well-being of people in this country, I can't think about another political party. And that's where we are. And that's not the ideal place. I'm not a Joe Biden fan, but it's like, what's the other alternative at the end of the day? Do we let these crazy people gain even more power and commit even more evil and heinous acts against humanity and set this country back another 30 years? That's the options that we have right now. And I've never been a fan of being like, oh, anybody but this other person. But we've been given no option. The right is operating on complete lawlessness, on just being completely evil and trying to see who can outdo the other one as far as showing a lack of humanity. And until that changes, it has to be Democrats over everybody else, regardless of policy and all those things. Because again, one side is just acting out of pure evil. Yeah, I don't know. I watched this movie over the weekend called Vengeance. It's free on, I think it was Prime that I was watching it on, if you have that. But it was kind of like this political commentary via a movie about a dude who's making a podcast about a alleged murder, right? And it was sort of just like showcasing for you both sides of the coin, right? It was a guy from New York and then a family from Texas, are kind of the main characters in this movie. And sort of kind of showing you how people like myself from the New York area or major cities in this country, we seem to think we have it all figured out. We have written off anybody from a small town. And on the other side of it, you have people from these small towns who have gotten it right in certain circumstances, maybe with their family values and things like that, but also live in this weird bubble that just isn't the real world as well. And it's just sort of showcasing how none of us have it right, I think, at the end of the day. And there are lessons to be learned from one another, as long as we're open to having the conversation. And I think the problem is right now, as it stands, majority of this country is just not open to having that conversation. Until that happens, and until we stop empowering crazy people like DeSantis and Trump that keep stirring the pot and driving an even bigger wedge and dividing us even more, until they stop getting the reaction they're looking for, we're going to be in a really, really scary place. So it's just, important to be mindful of these things. And again, it goes beyond like Democrat or Republican. It's like one side is just inherently evil and has no boundaries when it comes to how far they will go to maintain or gain power. And it means even if they have to use helpless people as pawns in their game and potentially destroy their lives, they're okay with it, again, as long as it means that they get the political gain and national attention that they're starving for. And that is a very scary place to be existing in this country. Now speaking of scary places in this country as a whole, but I think there is also this religious ideology that seems to justify people's hatred. And there's this push on the right for just like a Christian nation, even though this country was founded upon the idea of a separation of church and state, right? And freedom of religion and all these different things. It's a story that's as old as time when it comes to Christianity, of forcing people to convert and murdering them if they don't, and the one drop rule, and all of these different things, the purity rule, and it just continues on with this idea of superiority from the Christian religion. And I don't do this to shame anybody who considers themselves religious or Christian or Catholic, whatever it might be. Like, to each their own. I don't think religion itself is inherently bad. I think that organized religion and religious extremism that happens as a result of organized religion, I think that is incredibly dangerous. And I think it leads people into just like not having a real pulse on actual life in the world that we live in, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now with these anti-LGBTQ agendas that are happening, and using Christianity as the means to sort of back it up, and abortion, and all these things we've been seeing, right? So in regards to that, it is Pride Month, and as a celebration of Pride Month, Queen AOC, reposted one of her speeches, and in that clip, she condemns, quote, religious liberty, and talks about how people are using scripture to, quote, justify bigotry, and they're weaponizing and abusing that scripture. And she says, quote, "There is nothing holy about rejecting medical care of people. There's nothing holy about turning someone away from a hospital. There's nothing holy about rejecting a child from a family. There's nothing holy about writing discrimination into law." She's speaking, obviously, about these Bible thumpers and them weaponizing the Bible, weaponizing the message of God as a means to restrict the rights of human beings in this country. And you have, this is all I'm getting from wearemetoo.com. They say, according to the American Bar Association, religious individuals have refused to treat LGBTQ plus people because they say it infringes on their religious liberty. Sometimes they have sought exemptions from state and federal laws protecting LGBTQ plus people to keep them from treating patients that identify as such. Now, there have been a lot of cases like this one in the past. I think the famous one is you had I believe it was a gay couple that was looking to get a cake made for their wedding, and the bakery that they went to refused to do it because they were religious, and they said it infringed upon their religious rights, their religious liberty. And this went to court and all of the above. But we're not talking about a cake for somebody's wedding. We're not talking about something kind of frivolous like that. We're talking about potentially life and death. We're talking about somebody's health, their safety, again, their fucking life. And I don't understand how somebody can call themselves a Christian, but then be okay with somebody's life being in danger, possibly by refusing them medical assistance. It's all very hypocritical at the end of the day, right? And you have people who are deciding to play God, it feels like, at the end of the day. Because even if you are somebody who studies the Bible, and I'm never going to claim to be an expert on this, but from my own understanding of things, you have Jesus, who used to hang out and surround himself with the outcast of society, right? The prostitutes and all these different people that were shunned by society, because as a Christian, as a believer in God, as a someone who believes that we are all the children of God, he knew that you don't just turn your back on those who are not living life in accordance with what you believe, right? That you still, as a Christian, wrap your arms around those people because they are still your brothers and sisters in Christ, essentially, right? If we believe that we're all children of God. And yeah, that to me, like, why that is sort of left out of the conversation, I think just shows the agenda, right? Because again, if you really were Christian and you're doing all of this because you love people, you love God, and you want what's best for humanity, you wouldn't be doing things that put the lives of others at risk, right? That to me goes against any of the rules of Christianity and being a good person at the end of the day. So this is all based upon fear, the hate that lies in people's hearts, and then they're being fooled, or those that are the powers that be, the ones writing the laws, are using religion as a means to get people on board to push back against things that make them feel uncomfortable. Because that's really what it is at the end of the day. You don't want to see a particular group of people out there living their lives. It makes you uncomfortable. You don't believe it's right. And because you don't believe it's right, that means they shouldn't exist. And that's just so fucking wild. Like, that, again, that defies logic. I don't agree with your lifestyle. I don't agree with you as a person on a multitude of issues. Therefore, you just shouldn't exist. That's playing God at the end of the day. And I don't think that that's what the Bible intends or what Christianity is all about. I don't think we're supposed to be the people pushing judgment on others, right? That's for God. Only God can judge me, right? Yet we're out here playing God through laws and fear-mongering. Like, you look at a lot of these conversations that are happening, these things are non-issues. Like, in the grand scheme of things, the lives of trans people, them being able to live their lives peacefully, does not have a big effect on this country. What does have a big effect on this country is the inequality that's happening with wealth, how the gap between the haves and the have-nots is getting larger, how the American dream is essentially dead, that people can no longer afford housing. We have a housing crisis. Inflation is crazy. Government spending has been crazy, carried over from the last presidency. We have homeless people. We have unhoused people all over this country in large numbers. Meanwhile, we are spending excessive amounts on military. We have people without clean drinking water. We have people living in poverty all over this country, many of whom, some of the poorest states of this country, are red states. Yet they have you fooled into being scared of this non-existent boogeyman and focusing on issues that really have no effect on the quality of our everyday lives in this country. Wild times to be living in. And again, it's like there is no moral compass here anymore. You're weaponizing religion and people's faith in religion as a means to get your agenda across and to maintain power and to gain power. Again, like, there are no lines anymore. Crazy, crazy times. Now, one more story that is heavy, and then we'll move on to our lighter topic of conversation today. But I wanted to cover this story because you have a 10-year-old boy who took his own life. His name is Gianluca Silescas. And he took his own life after he suffered harsh bullying at Hillcrest Elementary School in Peekskill, New York. And his father describes how his son would come home crying after being bullied for 6 months. Even worse, his father says he tried to get the school involved, but they didn't do anything to stop it. Saying that his son, it got so bad his son didn't want to go back to school. And that the bullies would call his son, quote, weird, fat, ugly, creepy, and that his shoes were like a homeless person's shoes. He says that he went to the school. When he found out all this was happening, went straight to school officials and said, quote, the first thing I did was go to school, but no one paid attention to me. They told me they were going to call, but no one called me. And it even got so bad that the child's computer and musical instrument were stolen by the bullies, and the school didn't even intervene at that point. And I don't know, this story obviously is tragic and sad in a very obvious way. But I think it really, like, I think everything we're talking about right now, be it politics, be it societal issues, like, all of this is just so connected to this really toxic mindset that exists in our society. And it's the way that we ostracize and push back against anybody that appears to be different, or anybody that appears to be potentially weaker than us, right? And As somebody who suffered from bullying myself, I can particularly remember a few year stretch where it was rough. That shit is something I'm still working through till this day, right? As stupid and as silly as it sounds, that comprised and compiled with other things that I've kind of gone through and experienced, that caused a mindset and a lack of confidence that I'm still pushing back against till this day, and a lack of self-worth. And all of it is unnecessary, and it's like you look at what we talked about happening in Florida, right? And that's bullying in itself. You're bullying a group of people that are weaker than you, and you're in a position of power in Ron DeSantis, and you're picking on the people that are smaller than you. And then what do you think, someone like Ron DeSantis's kids are going to be like, or what was his father like, right? These are people who continue to pass down toxic traits onto their children. And as a result, a child 10 years old felt like his only escape was to take his own life. And I know I sometimes exist in like a mindset of maybe too much of like glass half full or rose colored glasses or whatever it might be. But it's just so crazy to me, because it's like, it doesn't have to be this way, right? If we all just took the time to demand better of ourselves and the people in our lives and to do the healing work, maybe you wouldn't have kids who learned this behavior from their parents, or live in a household where they felt like their parents could co-sign this, right? Or would co-sign it, or in a society where this is normalized. I think I was talking about this on one of my social media videos, but it's like we live in a society where you have like the jock and cheerleader mentality that is normalized and actually celebrated, where you have the toxic masculinity of a jock who is bullying and is, every bad attribute of a boy or a man. You have the women who chase after them because that's what they were taught a real man looks like, or sounds like, or acts like. That's just how boys are. And the people who are emotionally intelligent, the kids who are actually emotionally aware or trying to authentically be themselves, they're often the ones who are ostracized by their peers. And that cycle just continues to play out in the real world, in adult life. Again, we see it with the politicians or some of the people that are attracted to a particular side. People try to do inclusion, and Bud Light puts out a can or a design, or uses a spokesperson who's trans. Those dickhead jock mentalities begin to kick back in, and they have to do whatever they can to make that person feel shamed, or make that community of people feel shamed, right? And they use all their jock things of shooting their gun at a can of beer, driving it over with their big pickup truck, and whatever it might be, right? It's just like a never-ending cycle, and I don't see how we as a society haven't begun to collectively recognize, like, we're just doing a disservice to ourselves and the future generations as we continue on this nonsense. And like, it's not serving anybody, right? That mentality of having zero empathy for others, or trying to find a way to be superior to others, like, it's not serving us in any way as far as the progression of humankind, right? Yeah, it just, I don't know. I'm heartbroken for this story personally, on a like very specific level for this family and this child. But I think this is just like a part of a bigger conversation of a really unnecessary and dark part of our society that we continue to normalize. And you have the school not intervening even after the parents have gone there, and they're not taking the father seriously. And like, obviously I don't know the diversity or lack of diversity when it comes to the school staff, but it feels like a story as old as time. You have a immigrant parent, an immigrant in general in this country. They're looked down upon. So their voice, their opinion, and now their child is not as much of a priority. Is not going to be taken seriously. And again, that's an assumption based upon stereotypes, based upon stories that have happened before. So I'm not going to run away with that as fact, and I don't want you to either, but it does feel that way. Going on further in this story, there were protests happening at the Peekskill School Board meeting, and you had protesters wearing shirts with John Lucas' face, and his father was blaming the school's alleged inaction, saying, quote, "They say they can't help me because they're too busy." And now he's calling for the firing of their staff due to their negligence. And obviously there are two sides to every story, but even him being given the impression that they're too busy to help with this is just so crazy to me. And the school responded, their official statement is, quote, "We are deeply saddened, and now our focus is helping our school community to cope with their pain. Even if this incident did not occur on school property, we are working with local police and waiting on their findings." So no accountability whatsoever. No saying, hey, we're going to do some sort of internal investigation to see if maybe there was something we missed when it comes to this child. The lack of accountability. And like, I don't even know where I'm particularly going with this conversation, aside from the fact of like, I don't know, it just doesn't have to be this way. We all just have to do our part. If we all just did our fucking part, it wouldn't be this way. And I think that's what's so frustrating to me. Like, yeah, therapy is not the most fun thing in the world. Digging up all of your old shit is not the most fun thing in the world. But it's a hell of a lot better than carrying around all of that weight and all of those burdens on top of you. Like, I've been going to therapy on and off since I was in my mid-20s. And it helps. It really does. Particularly like right now at this point in my life, I'm seeing crazy, crazy amounts of progress because of the work that I've been putting in the last few years. Be it retreats, be it reading, be it therapy, be it soul searching that I've been having. I see the world differently. I see myself differently. I understand myself differently. And having that understanding, it's like, man, if we all were able to get that level of self-awareness and empathy for others and having that healing work for ourselves, like, the world wouldn't be the way that it is right now. And I think that's what's frustrating to me when I read stories like this one. And I'll kind of leave it there because I think I could just go off on a tangent about we need to do better. But a GoFundMe has been set up for the family of this young boy. It's named Justice for Lucas. Lucas spelled Lukas. If you want to donate, the donations will help cover the boy's funeral costs, family relocation, and anything else the family needs to get back on their feet. Again, the GoFundMe is Justice for Lucas, Lukas. And if anybody is having mental health struggles, you are considering taking your own life, please talk to somebody, reach out to somebody. It's never as bad as it seems. You can call the suicide prevention line, 1-800-273-8255, or text TALK to 741-741. It's never worth it. The sad irony of this story, like this last part, that his father was hoping to transfer him out of the school this year. 10 years old, that kid has a whole life ahead of him. Anybody that is struggling with any mental health issue, I promise you, like, it is not worth it. You have a whole life ahead of you, and whatever you're dealing with in this moment, it will pass eventually. Doesn't feel like it, I get it, but it will. All right, now with that said, let's take a little break here. It's been a heavy show thus far, and then we'll line things up as we always do with our Mi Gente segment, honoring something that is a really great thing happening for our community right now. So we'll do that. Mi Gente. All right, so I think it's obvious that we need a palate cleanse. We need some positive stuff to talk about. So we're going to move to Hollywood here. And we've talked a lot about how Hollywood has just not been getting it right when it comes to diversity and lack thereof, and not supporting communities of color and sharing their stories. But here is an example of getting it right. And a lot of people are really excited about this. So I'll admit, I am horrible when it comes to like superhero movies. I think movies in general, I randomly will watch things here and there, but I'm not somebody who's like on top of all this shit. But I do want to check this out. I'm going to be watching this one. So you have Spiderman across the universe, So you have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and it's an animated film, but it is being celebrated for its diversity, right? So WeAreMe2.com did a dope article on this. They say, the film features a vibrant array of characters from diverse cultures, ethnicities, and backgrounds. More specifically, the story of Miles Morales resonates deeply with Latino audiences who finally see themselves reflected on the big screen. Now, Miles Morales is Spider-Man, and he is the son of an African-American father and Puerto Rican mother. Now, the cast is diverse as well. In the film, you have Oscar Isaac voicing Miguel Ojeda. Shamik Moore voices Miles Morales. Latina actress Lauren Velez voices Miles' mother, Rio Morales, while Haley Steinfeld voices the voice of Gwen Stacy. And in this article, they were interviewing some of the people from the movie, and Shamik Moore, who plays Miles, said, quote, Miles' journey is about finding his place and navigating the expectations of those he admires. And they talk about how Shamik Moore, when doing this role and getting into character, he immersed himself into Puerto Rican culture to become the biracial young Spider-Man, which is awesome. They took the time to do that. And going on, he describes this as, quote, Miles' struggle is very relatable, allowing audiences to connect with him and encouraging them to embrace their unique identities. Miles is finding his way as a Black Latino young man, a superhero, and part of a multiverse. It's very hard for him, as is for every minority kid. This is like the conversation to be had where people write off like, oh, it's just a movie, it's just a cartoon, it's just this. And it's, again, like we were talking about with my guest on Monday, Eliana Jerez, it's more than that, because how many millions of people watch this? How many kids are going to watch this, right? And whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they're going to see Afro-Latino Spider-Man, or mixed race Spider-Man, or Black Spider-Man, or Puerto Rican, however they identify, and they're going to see themselves in that for the first time ever, right? And sure, this is just Spider-Man, and it's not like a real career for them to be striving for, but to see themselves held up in the highest light is going to have a profound effect. I mean, look at Encanto. When you saw little girls who saw themselves in these characters and how proud they were, how excited they were, right? To be able to celebrate being in their own skin. And stuff like this is important. I mean, even when it comes to the storytelling within it, right? So Laura Velez, who plays Miles Morales' mom, she says that the story delves into family dynamics, right? Saying, quote, it's a joy to see an Afro-Latino family at the center of such a powerful story. And again, you're seeing yourself in this family on the big screen, a major story like Spider-Man. Like, it is important. It's important to see ourselves. It is important to feel celebrated. And then, again, because it's the conversation that always happens where it's like, how are our stories going to relate to a non-Latin audience, right? That's like the topic of conversation. Are we universal enough for white people, basically, right? And you have a story as universal as anything else when it comes to, Spider-Man. Everybody knows Spider-Man. Many people are a fan of Spider-Man. It is a story that, we've all grown up knowing for generations at this point, right? But now you have it being told in a different way by characters that were not normally represented. And the fact that it could still have its universal appeal while also speaking to an audience that has felt ignored for a long time just shows you the power of diversity, and that it doesn't have to be just one way, that we can exist in the commercial broad spectrum of it all, and people are still going to be able to relate to it, right? It's not just white people that are universal to be related to. And stuff like this begins to kind of move the dial in that direction, right? Because they're going to see the success of this. They're going to see the positive press that they got and all the great attention they got from it. And that's going to encourage others to try and do more of the same. And that is how we begin to normalize seeing people of color and their stories, authentic stories, being at the center of major production, of major storylines, of major franchises, and it not even being something that we think about anymore. And that's obviously the goal. In the same way that we see a group of white teenagers heading, a gigantic TV show and nobody bats an eye about it. That's the same way we should be looking at stories like this one eventually, where it's just normal and we don't even think twice about it. And I think that's what the legacy of a film like this one is going to be, is that it continues to push us in that direction of moving towards normalizing diversity and normalizing the things that we see on the screen, the things we see in media in general, it representing the everyday life of people in this country, because this country is diverse. It's just sad that our media doesn't seem to reflect that consistently, right? But again, this is a step in the right direction. That's why it's important to talk about it, important to celebrate it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, with that said, let's wrap everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for conclusion stew.
All right, y'all. I don't have the energy to just dive into all of this shit too heavily, too deep right now, because these topics were incredibly heavy. But again, political theater at its best. Florida going out of its own state to pick up migrants in Texas and fly them at the expense of taxpayers to California. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. As a Republican, how are you okay with your state spending your hard-earned tax dollars to go to another state and fly migrants from that state to California? They're literally using your money for nonsense, and you're just sitting there clapping it up. How do you justify that? How do you not say, no, enough is enough? You probably shouldn't be using my tax money to fund your political theater and your, presidential hopes. Enough is enough. How are you not at that point yet when you're looking at somebody like Ron DeSantis or the Republican Party as a whole? That's my question. Moving on. That's the last thing I'm going to say. It's like, fuck, man. The lack of humanity just for the sake of power is so scary. And we talk about Pride Month here, when it comes to AOC reposting an old speech that she gave in regards to the weaponization of religion and Christianity that's happening in this country to justify bigotry. It's like, again, have your religion, that's what this country is founded upon, is the idea of freedom of religion. But is it Christian of you to weaponize your ability to help somebody, that you're going to say, oh, I'm sorry, because I don't agree with your lifestyle. As a medical professional, I'm not going to give you the care that you need. I don't think that that's very Christian. I don't think that that's what God intended when it comes to humanity. And again, it goes against everything that, if you follow Jesus and you believe in Jesus, everything that he stood for, you're going against it by shunning people, and in some cases potentially putting their livelihood at risk because you don't agree with their lifestyle. That's just crazy. The idea that you have individuals who are medical, professionals refusing to treat those who identify as LGBTQ plus is wild. And again, it shows the lack of humanity, the weaponization of Christianity, and I think probably why you're seeing a decline in the next generation wanting to even participate in religion as a whole, because the last generation has decided to weaponize it and use it as a means to promote hatred. At the end of the day, it feels like. Not everybody, obviously, but many of the people in office right now. And then this tragic story about the 10-year-old boy, Gianlucas Ilescas, who took his own life after bullying as a result of the school in Pierce Gill in New York, Hillcrest Elementary School, not taking his bullying seriously, not reprimanding the students who were bullying him throughout the school year. It's just sad. Again, it's like a bigger conversation about the society that we live in, where things like bullying are normalized and things like ostracizing anybody who's different is normalized. And it's just hurting people. It is people who have never done the healing work, having kids, passing on their own toxic behaviors onto their kids, and the cycle continues. And like I said, it's just unnecessary. And tragedies like this one happen because people aren't doing the work on themselves to heal, and we as a society aren't working hard enough to shed the toxic norms that have been passed down from generation to generation. And again, if you want to donate to the GoFundMe that the family has for John Lucas, it's named Justice for Lucas. Lucas spelled Lukas. And anybody suffering mental health, again, like, I can't stress this enough. Whatever you're going through will pass eventually. Like, we need you here. There are going to be people who are suffering if you're not here. And whatever you're going through, it's not worth taking your life. I mean, think about this kid, 10 years old, has a whole life ahead of him. It's tragic. And again, if you are going through any issues like that, you can call 1-800-273-8255 or text TALK to 741-741. And somebody will be there to help you and hopefully get you through whatever moment that you're suffering through. And on a positive side of things, we talk a lot about the lack of diversity in Hollywood. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is something that is getting it right, where you have a gigantic historical character in Spider-Man being played by a African-American and Puerto Rican young man, a mixed race kid, a family that is mixed race that also has strong Latin roots and all of the above, right? The idea that kids are going to be able to see themselves on screen, see themselves in these characters, and the other characters that they have on there that are representative of Latin and African-American voices. I think it's just really important, again, to realize like little things like this begin to shift culture and normalize the idea of diversity, and that it doesn't take a white face or a white voice or a white story to be universally recognized or something that could universally connect with a wide audience, right? That's just a crazy brainwashing, I don't even know how to describe it. That's like a crazy tactic that's been brainwashed into all of us to think that white stories are universal, whereas ours are just niche. It's crazy. But this one got it right. So I love that. I can't wait to check this out. I'm trying to watch it over the weekend if I get some time. But man, that's it. Remember, I'll be at the 116th Festival in New York. If you are around, if you're in the New York City area, be celebrating the Puerto Rican Day Parade. This is like the pre-party to the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I'm so damn excited. It's my first time getting to perform there. So I'll be at the iHeart stage all day. Again, I think I'm on 112th Street. Don't quote me on that. Just find the iHeart stage. I'll be over there if you are in the New York City area. And our Just Be Social Club, our monthly mastermind group, we're still taking applications. Brenda at mindofyounglord.com. Send her an email if you want to be a part of our July launch. And that's it, man. Have an amazing weekend. Stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.